What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Dave. This is my 2004 C5 Corvette. So if you're into Corvette content, especially C5 content, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Now, in my previous video, I replaced the rear shocks with some C6 Z06 shocks. In today's video, we're going to be putting in some front shocks just for comparison. On the right side is the OEM C5 shock, and this is the C6 Z06 shock. Just so everybody knows, that is the part number. So let's get into removing the existing shock and putting in the new one. Alright, now first things first, you are going to have to put a jack underneath the front suspension here in order to compress the shock, because you are going to have to hold this compressed with a series of zip ties. Most people don't have one zip tie that'll do the whole thing, so I'm gonna have a series of zip ties on there to keep that compressed while I undo the top nut and the bottom two bolts there. The top is a 15, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. You see that you do have to hold the top of the bolt here, or else once you start undoing this, it's just going to start rotating on you. As you can see, I chewed up my hand on the passenger side, but neither here nor there. And then on here, this is a 13mm bolt on each side, and there is a nut on the bottom that you have to get to as well, just to hold the nut and turn the bolt. But first, let's get into compressing the shock and putting some zip ties on here. Alright, now with the shock compressed with a series of zip ties, now it's time to loosen the top nut. I guess you could have done the top nut before you'd done the zip ties, but either way, it doesn't really matter. Now, the way that I found the easiest to undo this top nut is undo on your driver's side, undo the windshield washer fluid. There's only two 10mm nuts that you have to remove, these two, and then your windshield washer reservoir pulls out. And the same on the passenger side with the coolant reservoir. Undo these two, 1 and 2, and it'll give you access to the top of the bolt, so that's a lot easier to hold on to. So let me get this out of the way and I'll show you. Alright, so now with the reservoir turned off to the side, there is the top of the bolt that you need to hold on to. You see when you come in here, it's flat on two sides, so you just need to get an adjustable wrench on there to hold the top of that while you undo the nut with a 15mm wrench. Alright, so I'm just bringing the 15mm wrench in through the wheel well here. Put it on here and you can see the whole thing turns. So again, I'm just going to get this an angle I can grab onto it. And now once you're holding onto this good, you can start to turn. I guess you could hit this with a little bit of PB Blaster and make it easier to turn. Alright, so now with the top nut off, you could do it inside the wheel well, but the issue is when you have both wrenches in here, you kind of reach a point where your wrenches are in each other's way and you can't get that nut all the way off. That's why I recommend removing that. It takes 2 seconds. Much easier to access all that in order to get that nut off. Take that top bushing off, and then now we can attack the lower two bolts again. 13mm, one on each side, and this is a bolt on top, and there is a nut underneath that you have to hold, so 13mm on top and bottom in order to get those two off. Alright, so now with the two bolts off the bottom removed, the nut off the top removed, lowered my jack back down. The zip ties are compressing the shock right now. And then you can just, hopefully, it's compressed enough where you can just wiggle this out. There we go. One shock out. Alright, so now I have the new C6 Z06 shock, zip tied, compressed, ready to go. I just do have to make note of which way the bracket is. It's going to sit. Oops. I'm hitting my car with it. It's going to sit like this when it's down on there. Don't accidentally flip that over, because then you're going to have to redo everything. So just make sure you put that in right. like that. It's going to go in the same way the old one came out. So now that's in place. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put the bottom bolts in first. I mean, there may be like another way to do this, but I'm going to do it this way. Just so the bottom of the shock is in place. Okay. And then I'm going to cut these zip ties and hopefully guide this into the hole on top all at the same time. There we go. Now the bushing is all the way up and in, and now we can go ahead and put the new bushing and new nut on the top. It's going to go back on the same way the old one came off. So again, 15 millimeter from inside the wheel well, and tighten this until everything starts spinning on me. And now you see the bolt is starting to turn. So I will then now grab this and just begin tightening it. Alright, so now with that nut good and tight, I can put the windshield washer fluid reservoir back on, and I can begin tightening the two 13 millimeter bolts down at the bottom of the shock. And then this job will be done. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this quick little walkthrough on how to replace your front shocks in your C5 Corvette. Now this is my first time ever doing shocks, so if I can do it, you can do it too. Just take your time. Obviously you need to compress the front, where in the rear you didn't have to compress the rear. I did a video on the rear, so if you need to do that, make sure you check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below for that one. So as always guys, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Thank you and have a great day.